Remember when we did edits to podcasts? Those were the days.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, you splice and dice, but like only the beginning. And
I just cut the beginning and the end. Basically, we got to say something real dumb to do a real edit. All right, that seems like a good thing to start on. Let's go. Hello and welcome into the Section 109 podcast from Studio Breezy. We got Sir Mix-a-Lot. Hey, buddy. Bobble Juan, the GOAT, Matthew, Breezy, and we are here to do a little less emotional, little more analytical review, partially by the numbers and mostly just by bad soccer takes of the season that was. Matthew, ready to do it?
Yeah, let's get into this thing.
We made a show doc, and it's pretty long and pretty detailed. I would like to start with the very top and a thing that we talked about in leading up to this podcast is that we re-listened to our analytical review from last year. And in our analytical review from last year, I think I said something to the effect of, holy shit, we give up 0 penalties this year. We're fucked next year. And, well, we weren't fucked, but...
Oh, truer words.
But like, so we didn't give a single one up, and I said we're going to revert to the mean. And then in this year, we gave up 4, which was 1/3 of our total league goals allowed.
Yeah, we also lost 2 penalty shootouts.
I don't want to talk about that one. We didn't have any penalty shootouts last year.
Yeah, exactly. But like we got, mean reversion was just super mean to us.
Hey. All right, Matthew, let's take us through the season. Let's start at the beginning as we have done in the past few years. We're going to do chapters of the season. Let's go. Tell me the narrative.
So chapter 1 is entitled Taylor fucking Gray. And it starts with the 3-0 win at home against Gold Star Detroit.
To open up the season.
We go to Des Moines Menace and win 4-1 in the Open Cup. We go out to California for a weekend, beat the shit out of Albion San Diego 5-0. There's a 1-0 win against Flower City at home. And then there's a 1-1 draw at Birmingham in the Open Cup that we succumb on penalties for. And this is a really good place to have a chapter end because and there was a game literally at Michigan Stars on the weekend right after the Birmingham Open Cup game. But it's in this Birmingham game that Taylor gets hurt. And he does not play any minutes at all until the season finale of the regular season against Club de Leon. And I just want to point out this is Taylor's stat sheet from he did not have a goal or an assist in the Club de Leon or Flower City game, so it's a really clean look at his first few games of the season. Taylor had 1 goal, 4 assists, and 2 hockey assists in 5 games.
Pretty good. And by the way, you should have had a whole other assist if Alex McGrath doesn't miss a wide open goal.
7 goal contributions. And yeah, Alex McGrath had a wide open goal save.
That he still scored.
Unbelievable through ball that we couldn't get the assist on. Practically 8. I mean, in all honesty, you care about the XA on Taylor's pass there and not that he doesn't actually get credited with an assist, right? It's essentially...
Speak for yourself. I care about him not getting that assist. I told Alex McGrath as much right after the game.
It's essentially 8 goal contributions in those 5 games, including 2 Open Cup games. And it was...
And by the way, you said 2 hockey assists?
I think it's 1, 4, and 2, yeah.
The 2 hockey assists are both penalties drawn.
Yeah. Yeah. To win the one that wins the Flower City game at home.
And that ties
the Birmingham game and the Open Cup. And I had specifically kind of challenged Taylor. Cheers, buddy.
Not to his face.
On this podcast, saying in our review pod that if one of the things I thought we weren't as good at last year was truly getting our wingers one-on-one in the box, going at defenders, winning those battles to create opportunities to score or assist or create danger from. And right. And I specifically said, I'd like to see Taylor get more assists in the next year.
Well, boy, did he listen to you.
Boy.
First of all, he had 4 primary assists and 2 hockey assists. Last year, he only had 2 primary assists.
Correct.
In an entire season.
Correct. He had matched his league total in primary assists
In the first game.
And
By the way,
came out like a man possessed.
By the way, also in my brain, how memory is not always correct. In my mind, we played Albion to open the season. We didn't. We clearly didn't.
We did not. But so in that stretch, we scored 14 goals in 5 games. That's 2.8 goals per game.
Yep.
Obviously heavily influenced by, 3-0 against Gold Star, 4-1 at Des Moines, and 5-0 at Albion, who were hopeless that day.
But we also brought down the average playing Birmingham, who were USL Championship.
And Flower City, who never left their own box.
And who played us remarkably well defensively, and who never left their own box because they had 6 defenders playing at one time.
Yeah. So that ends up being 2.8 goals per game in those 5 games. 2 goals conceded in those 5 games for a 0.4 goals against average.
Started out gangbusters.
Yeah, and then after that injury, chapter 2 is entitled "Learning to Grind."
Could also be called "The Offense Grinds to a Halt."
Yeah, it definitely was, because
in comparison,
you have in the next 6 games, which are at Michigan Stars, Savannah Clovers home, at Flower City Union, Albion home, Maryland home, and away to Maryland. In those 6 games, we only scored 8 goals total.
And it's a 0-0, 1-1, 1-0, 2-0, 1-0, 2-1.
So giving up 2 goals only in 6 games is a 0.33 goals against average, which is fantastic. But our offense went down to 1.33 goals per game in that stretch.
Do you know who scored the first league goal against us?
Savannah Clovers on a penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, who scored the last league goal against us?
And that was week 5 of the season.
Yeah.
Was the first time we conceded a goal in league play.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just this was a stretch where we did not particularly create a ton of stuff all the time.
Offensively.
Mm-hmm. And yet, look through here. You have the Marcus banger at Flower City Union. You have a Marcus banger free kick against Maryland Bobcats. You have some really good creation in the way Maryland Bobcats game.
Yes.
That was the signs, and we'll get into chapter 3, really the sign of something starting to be really made. Because in this time period, we weren't awesome creatively. And teams, when you lose your best creative player, get worse at creativity. This is a normal thing. And I think it's a testament in that we kind of figured out in this stretch that
Mix.
Holy shit, our defense is really, really good.
Yep.
And that's what's going to give our offense time to figure things out.
We allowed 2 goals in 6 games. Before that, we conceded 2 goals in 5 games. None of those were in the league. So up until this point, we were 9 games in a week and conceded 2 league goals.
Right.
Wild shit.
So we move into chapter 3, and this is kind of it was not our peak, but it was we were definitely peaking and really putting it all together.
It was when the offense started peaking again.
Yes.
For the second time without Taylor, and for the only time without Taylor.
So you start with a Club de Leon game at home, which was 2 weeks after, or 3 weeks after, something like that, after the last regular season Nisa game. There were a couple of friendlies in there mixed in. The 1-1, Marcus's free kick to rescue the game in extra time is an incredible moment. You've got an LA Force win, 3-0, just beat the fucktar out of them. You've got a game that I don't know if it's the best game we played all season, but the Michigan Stars win 2-0 at home. It was everything. Michigan Stars tried to be who they were last year to us, and who they mostly are, just period, all the time. And we were just simply better than them. Mm-hmm. It was also early on in Jesus Ibarra's tenure. I think it was his first start, actually. And like finally adding a creative piece like Jesus was really important to this team to replace Taylor. And like it all kind of came together in that game. You also have a 1-1 draw at Maryland where they had an absolute unreal banger. We had an unreal banger from Marcus from a free kick. By the way, that Maryland Bobcats 1-1 draw and that Marcus free kick, 8 straight NISA League games with Marcus having a goal.
Leading up to that game. That was the 8th one.
That was the 8th.
Unbelievable.
You've got a Gold Star, or a win at Gold Star 2-1.
Once Taylor got hurt, Marcus was the offense.
Correct. And like, we did not create a ton most of those games. And a lot of times it was just Marcus like
doing Marcus shit.
Taking the one chance or taking the one free kick and getting it done. You've got the 2-1 win at Gold Star in there, and then the 5-0 pantsing of Savannah Clovers to close out Chapter 3. 14 goals scored in 6 games, 2.33 goals per game. Still only conceded 3 goals, in those 6 games, which is a 0.5 goals per game average. And then you've got Chapter 4.
And the thing that's changed so far, we have 2.8, 1.3, 2.3, and the goals scored, they bounced up and down. We have allowed 0.4, 0.33, and 0.5.
Yeah.
Like, we are just not allowing goals to be scored.
Right. And
when we were, which we'll get to later, the types of goals we conceded, like it's penalties. It's not a lot of from the open play.
Some mistakes in there.
Individual mistakes. Like, yeah.
So Chapter 4, I'm calling it the lull of 4 matches in 8 weeks because we had a weekend off after Savannah, then played Flower City, and then had another weekend off. Played Apotheos somewhere midweek in there. And this is also where you get the Colin Stripling injury against Apotheos that holds him out until the end of the season. But in this stretch, you've got Flower City Union. That was a 0-0 draw at home. LA Force win 3-1 at home. Then we immediately turn around and go to LA.
3 days later.
3 days later, we lose that game 2-1 on a late penalty. And we go to Albion, and we draw that game 0-0 by the grace of Rod himself.
Yes, because that game should have been 2-0 Albion.
Yeah.
We were not great.
So, like, this is, like, undeniably our worst stretch of the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 games. We scored 4 goals. That's a 1.0 goals per game.
Not
and
great.
We conceded 3 goals, 0.75.
Which is the reason we came out of that with 1 loss, 2 draws, and a win.
Yeah.
Because our defense was fucking unbelievable.
And then we go to Chapter 5. And you titled this chapter, Getting Our Groove Back. And the Gold Star game that starts at a 1-1 draw is 3 weeks after the Albion game. There's 2 full weekends we were supposed to play, and a Savannah game got postponed for COVID. Club de Leon game got postponed for. They didn't blame it on hurricane, did they? They blamed it on a field issue.
Crimes. It got
just crimes against humanity. So like we had 2 playing weekends off.
Yep.
So we come back 3 weeks later,
and because of the COVID thing. We know now that they weren't able to fully practice for a large portion of that time because they had to have like certain people quarantine and certain other people quarantine and they had to do a bunch of shit, which made it so it wasn't like they spent 2 weeks like honing their craft. They went 2 weeks like trying to get their shit back together.
Right. So you've got the 1-1 draw against Gold Star.
Not great.
Not ideal. And a 1-0 win at Savannah, which was so good to be there for, to watch it happen. A 2-0 win at Flower City, which clinched the NISA regular season title.
Hell yeah.
A really interesting, weird 2-3 loss at Savannah. And which also featured like some load management.
And I think a pretty clear letdown mentally and physically after winning the title.
Agreed.
And that's not me saying it's okay, but I do think that's what happened.
Yeah. And then a 1-0 win against Club de Leon midweek right afterwards.
And a dominant 1-0 win.
Yeah, it could have been 3-4, whatever.
We were much like as we've refound our groove through this, the Savannah getting that goal, feeling a lot better, going to Flower City, getting the 2, like playing better. Savannah not playing bad, like having some freak stuff and not playing great, to be clear.
Yeah.
But like the offense playing a little bit better. and then Club de Leon playing like genuinely well. Like that was us getting our groove back offensively because we never lost our groove defensively.
Second half Savannah reminded me a little bit of second half Independent Cup final against AC Houston, sir. Like the game was really.
Excuse me, sir. It's pronounced AC Houston, sir.
Like it's one of those letdowns that, I mean, like those are the only 2 times where it ever happened.
And why was that, Matthew?
Well, we can talk about this interesting stat. Spoiler alert: we did not give up a goal against Flower City Union in the playoffs to round it out. So that's 16 goals conceded in 28 matches that mattered. 16. In the second half of Savannah, we gave up 2 goals, and in the second half of AC Houston, sir, we gave up 2 goals, which is a 25%. It's a clear quarter of our goals conceded in those 2 halves.
That's the
and one specific thing happened in both of those halves. Aiden Bowers was subbed off at halftime for load management.
And both times he was subbed out, the only 2 times he was subbed out this season for load management, we conceded 2 goals.
Right.
Wild.
I guess the second half against LA Force, we gave up 2 goals in that one in the second half. But like my point is,
not the only times we gave up 2 goals he subbed out. The only times he subbed out, we gave up 2 goals.
No, we gave up 2 goals against LA Force on the road in the second half.
No. I'm saying every time he subbed out.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Every time.
I see what you're saying. Well, those are the only 90 minutes of the entire season he missed.
That's my point.
He played in.
No Aiden Bowers.
He played in 2,490 minutes, and when he was on the pitch, we gave up 12 goals total, which is, I did the math at one point in time.
The goals per minute? Or minutes per goal?
2,490 divided by 12. We gave up a goal every 207 minutes and 30 seconds.
When Aiden was on the field.
That is
insane.
Basically every 2 1/3 games.
And when he was off the field, we gave up 4 goals a game. 4 goals per 90.
Jesus.
A goal every 15 minutes. No, a goal every.
No, it's like that weird 22 and a half or whatever.
You're right. 22 and a half. Goal every 22 and a half minutes. You're right.
So that's
wild.
To wrap up chapter 5, we're at 7 goals scored in 6 games. We're only 4 goals conceded in 6 games, which is 0.67.
Defense staying good. So
the defense stayed good.
I'm going to read you the defenses through. 0.4, 0.3, 0.5, 0.75, 0.67. Like the defense stayed consistently really good throughout the season.
Yeah.
The offense, however, I know you want to make a point at the end of this on what could have happened if you look at what Flower City happened in that game, but 2.8, 1.33, 2.33, 1.17, 1.0. Like those are
1.0,
1.0, then 1.17. I mixed those, but those are massive difference. It was the offense that fluctuated all year by the numbers, and the reason we did this by per game is because then you see how much we were relying per game. The defense continued to allow less than a goal a game.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing here where if I for whatever reason decided to pull Savannah Clovers into Chapter 4 just because to make Chapter 3 5 games and to make Chapter 4 also 5 games, you're looking at 9 goals being scored in 5 games, just a shade under 2 goals, right? Per game. And you're looking at 9 goals scored in 5 games for Chapter 4, which was our 1.0, our worst, our worst stretch. And I think it just goes to show, I picked out the chapters because of breaks in the season, but opponents also varied and quality also varied,
and how we played varied.
There's some other things that go into this.
It's why when you and I were setting up this doc and a few minutes ago, we were talking about should we divide up the season by quarter. I don't think it told an accurate story.
Yeah,
I think the way you divided it this way does tell an accurate story, an accurate narrative rather.
Yeah,
or at least a narrative that explains. The one thing I will also say is in that Flower City game, we know the XG was 3.9 roughly to 0.4 or whatever.
Yeah, it was. So the updated official number was 3.90 to 0.38. And if you look at 1.17 and you're like, well, goals got a little bit worse from the second half of the season. I think consider this. In our first 5 games of the season, we were That should say 22 games, shouldn't it? No, yeah, 22 games. Our first 5 games of the season, we were at 2.8 goals per game. The final 22 games, and I'm leaving out the Independent Cup when I did this math, we scored a rate of 1.52 goals per game. Mm-hmm. Smack on 1.5.
Why are those first 5 games important, Matthew?
Taylor Gray. And just his ability to create stuff for himself or others, I think had a massive role in why the offense was, like had a precipitous drop. Also, that's a small sample size. 5 games is a small sample size. So like we don't know, we can't like definitively say like what happened.
We would have scored 2.8 goals a game all season.
But like Ross Singer has a listener question here, where he asks, we stopped scoring, like the tap was shut off. Why? And I think there might have been a narrative that like we stopped scoring in like a lot of goals in the second half, in like later parts of the season, and that's why our form was worse, and maybe why we didn't, advance in the semifinals. And it's just kind of not true. I mean, like, yes, the number in chapter 5 is 1.17, and that is our second lowest number, which follows chapter 4, which was our lowest number at 1.0. But I think a more accurate like storyline is number 1. I think some of Marcus's brilliance in chapter 2, for example, and to some degree chapter 3, although the team was better in chapter 3, but especially in chapter 2, we only scored 8 goals in 6 games, and like you've got 2 free kicks in there. You've got the headed corner from Anatoly in the Savannah Clovers game to rescue a draw. You've got Marcus with a header from kind of deep in the box against Albion. You've got a pressing pocket pick by Alex McGrath against Albion. We did have some good creation in the Maryland Bobcats away game that we won 2-1. But like there wasn't, it was only a few moments, honestly, of chance creation that we were just really clinical with in that game. Mm-hmm. It's possible, and I don't know this for certain because I don't have advanced data right now. But like I think it's even at 8 goals in 6 games, we possibly overperformed our XG in chapter 2. And whereas I think we were playing a little bit closer to our XG in other parts of the season. And point number 2 is in chapter 5, we talked about getting our groove back, putting some chances together. Like, can we be the best version of ourselves by the time that the playoff game comes around? And let me remind you that our XG in the playoff game was 3.9, which is an astonishing number. Number 1, did not score. But like, if you put that in win probability calculators for XG, us versus them, it's spitting back like 99 point, like off the map win probability. If you give us 2 goals, and this is why like you got to be careful when drawing conclusions based on purely goals scored. Mm-hmm. Because so many variants can happen. A keeper can be better one game or not be better. You can hit the post and it go in versus hit the post and it doesn't go in. If you give us 2 goals in the Flower City Union playoff game, and I realize, again, I know we didn't score them, but if you give us 2, which is half of our XG,
half of what we created and what we should have scored,
we go to 9 goals in 6 games for chapter 5, which is
1.5.
Solidly 1.5.
Solidly at our season average.
Bang on our season average
after Taylor
post Taylor Gray injury.
So our offense was basically I was Taylor Gray magic at the beginning and Marcus magic for large portions of the season.
And then some kind of regular team goals.
Towards the end, and Taylor came back, and you saw it in the second half of the
he was electric in that Flower City game. I mean, he should have had, on another day, he scores probably 2 in the Flower City game. He scores 1 against Club de Leon that was ruled out. Like,
that was a good goal.
And like, so I guess my kind of take here is, I think the offense was there. I think like weird and like finishing luck that we ran hot for a little while, and maybe we just ran cold by the end. but we were creating some really good stuff, especially in that semifinal. And like the process of getting to where we were absolutely in top form for a semifinal game after winning the regular season and being, decent form to win the league all season long, it's hard to argue that a 3.9 to a 0.38
their first
is
shot on
not
target,
ridiculously good and exactly what the process was supposed to lead to.
Yep.
And at some point, finishing luck comes into it, and that's just fucking life.
Sometimes the ball doesn't go in, man, and it sucks, and it's not okay. But like, what can you do? 4 times we hit the crossbar. Anyway, let's not belabor. Let's not go. We've already reviewed the final. All right, let's go to men's goals breakdown. So one thing that was really fun last year that we broke down is we broke down run of play goals versus transition goals. And then we also did corners and PKs. And so for corners, I'm going to put... you did free kicks and corner. You didn't do just set pieces. Okay, cool. We broke it out even more. So run of play, we scored 40. Did you do 49? Is that what this adds up to?
49.
So we scored 21 run of play goals. Do you have what we did last year? Will you look that up while I'm talking about this so we can compare them?
I know we did 50 goals last year.
We did. So we had 21 run of play goals, 9 of which were in transition. Run of play was 21, and then we had 9 additional transition goals. These are subjective, but Matthew and I agree on them. We had 8 goals scored on corners, plus a free kick, by the way, parentheses, that we earned via a corner. We scored 5 free kicks, 5 direct, and then 1 where we scored off of a free kick rebound. And we had 6 penalty kicks. So again, we scored 6 penalties. We had 5 free kicks, which is fucking nuts. That is nuts. We're not scoring one for at least 4 seasons after scoring 5 this season. We scored on 8 corners, which is, I think, very good. We had 9 in transition, which I'm quite happy with, and 21 from the run of play, which I'm also happy with. We didn't score in only one way. Even though the offense didn't always feel good, and sometimes it was somebody doing magic, we did score from a variety of ways. And I think that is really, really fun to think about, kind of how we were scoring our goals. Did you find last year's review?
Yes. No, that's not even true. So we did not break out.
We broke them out differently last year.
We did not break out the set pieces into corners and
we
free
just
kicks.
did free kicks and we did set pieces.
But ready? Okay, so this year, regular run of play, 21.
Last year?
21.
Okay. Transition?
This year?
9.
10 last year.
This year, we on set pieces, we had 13.
11 last year.
Penalties this year, we had 6.
8 last year.
So 2 less penalties, 2 more.
And we earned 1 more than we scored last year as well as this year.
Yep, because Ian missed 1 and Marcus missed 1.
Yeah.
Wildly
Actually, no,
similar.
because Marcus missed 1 in the Independent Cup. Not Ian Serra. We gave it to him. I was listening, so I remember this now. Ian Serra, we gave to him because he got his own rebound.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Hell yeah. So this is...
remarkably similar, by the way.
Remarkably similar. Now, you did some really good work here of game by game. And I think it might be fun to talk about a couple of these games that we think might be fun. So against Des Moines, we had 2. It's the first one that I find interesting. We had 2 run of play, 2 transition. So we had no set pieces, which is kind of surprising. One of those was a chip from halfway, which I'm assuming that was a transition goal.
Yeah, the first and second goals versus Des Moines were run of play, and
the last 2 were in transition.
Yeah, and the last 2 were in transition, partly just because McGrath's chip to make it 3, and then Taylor's ball for 1 Louis to make it from basically midfield to put him in behind to make it 4. We're just killing off the game. There was some really good creation in that game, especially in the first half of that game for us. Mm-hmm. Some really, really good stuff. And again, like Taylor Gray had the assist for Marcus off of a Moo cross for the hockey assist. And then Damian and Luis Garcia Sosa had a little 1-2 action for the second goal there after Mumu's injury and Damian came in. By the way, you want to know who played the pass for Luis Garcia Sosa that started the Damian Luis Garcia Sosa 1-2.
No. Just kidding. Yes. Who?
Taylor Gray. Coming inside.
Fuck. So a couple more that I think are interesting. The next one is the 5-0 at Albion, where we scored 2 corners, 2 transition, and 1 run of play, which is interesting. It was right afterwards. And then from then on, there's not really a lot of rhyme or reason. It's like a PK one game, a PK another game, then nothing, then 1 corner, then 1 run of play, then 1 run of play, 1 transition, then 1 free kick, then 2 run of. I mean, there's no real anything. We get to LA Force, which is 3 goals in that game. We have a corner and 2 run of play, which I just find interesting. AC Houston Sur is fun because we have a 1 run of play, 1 corner, 1 PK.
Yeah, and these are a little bit subjective. Like one of those in the home LA Force game in June or early July, I think you can legitimately argue is probably closer to transition. That's just kind of how the nature of this breaks down, and I think hopefully we do a decent job of like, you know, maybe it goes one way. We count it as run of play one time, and maybe we count it as transition the other time, so it kind of evens out, and we're not like favoring run of play soccer to make ourselves look better versus like transition soccer. I think sometimes things can be multiple things, and this is just how we've chosen to break them down.
Yep, I do think it's interesting. And then like the only other interesting one to finish out the season is Savannah free kick ×2.
Yeah, so you've got the Marcus Direct free kick in the first half of that game, and then the second half of that game, you've got Alex playing a ball into the box. The Anatoly heads on, I think, a Savannah defender, like kind of mini clears it, whatever, not very far. And in the recycle, like it comes to Mumu, and he plays it across the box square to Jesus, who hits it first time back across the goal, kind of curling low. And like we counted that as a free kick because it comes from a free kick. Anatoly is not forward if it's not that type of scenario.
By the way, I would have counted that as just a set piece.
Yeah, I don't know why we
as naming wise, now that we're talking about it, instead of breaking it out from.
Yeah, I'm thinking about something. Did we classify the Savannah 1-0? We called that, okay, Savannah 1-0 in October. We called that run of play. It's worth noting that, and it is run of play because it's the second phase of the run of play, but that comes from a throw in. Initially.
Right. It's just that, and that's where the subjectivity comes in, where you and I watch a goal and we decide when subjectively does it become stop being a set play and start being run and play. So I agree with that. Let's go to some numbers and statistics for the coming out of the offensive side and look at the defensive side. So in 2022, we scored 50, allowed 31. And then you and I agreed to remove 6 of those goals in the Atlanta game because we were facing an MLS opponent, and that's just wild. So call it 50 and 25. And we did not do that in this year, by the way, because Birmingham is not so far above us talent-wise. We just felt we kept it in the wins and losses category because it was a game and a competition that mattered in 2022, but we felt like including a 6-goal loss was a little bit unfair.
Yeah, so just for like full apples to apples comparison, you've got 24 league games in both seasons. You've got an independent cup game and a playoff semifinal game, and then this season we've got amateur competition in Des Moines, Minnesota, who by the way are very good. They're very good for Open Cup, and then you've got Birmingham. Sorry. So like there is a kind of a big dichotomy between like common opponents, Memphis, Birmingham in the championship, and then like Des Moines, Minnesota, a very, very good amateur team, and then Atlanta United. So like there's kind of a big swing there that like you could read into if you wanted to, but like I think the numbers just speak for themselves. This is who we were. This is who we played.
I completely agree. So we scored 50 last year. We scored 49 this year. Feel very good about that. Last year we allowed 31, which I think you and I both wanted, or excuse me, 25 after you remove Atlanta. I think you and I felt good about that. We wanted the under 20, maybe a little closer to that 15. And you know where we got?
16 goals.
16 goals. And
that includes, again, we talked about this about Aiden, like the 2 second halves that Aiden did not play for load management reasons. And both of those, like independent cup, which we treated as very much a load management and kind of a friendly, if we're being honest. And then the second half of Savannah on the road, right after clinching the regular season title, did a little bit of load management in that game. Like, and that's where 25% of the goals against came from on this season.
It's wild.
Like, that's pretty good. Like, that's not just pretty good. That's really good. And in fact, let me go one step further, because we gave up 12 goals in NISA this year in 24 games, 12 goals, right? That's a goals against average of 0.5, which is pretty ridiculously good. But what if I told you that goals against average is the best defense in NISA history? And I mean, like, better than Detroit. That
is crazy.
And I think some of you might rightly say, hey, well, hang on. Is that a really fair comparison? Like, the league is worse in 2023 overall than it is in 2021. And to that, I would say, don't you think that affects us too? Like, in terms of recruiting or whatever else, like, that also affects us. And we still have to go out there and play this Division 3 league that sometimes feels more like Division 3.5 in terms of players, in terms of whatever. And yeah, I think it's ridiculous. The best defense ever in NISA history. And by the way, the third best offense, only second to our team last year.
Wait, third best offense or second best offense?
Third best offense this year. Second best offense last year. Detroit's.
Oh yeah, they had it.
2.05 goals per game or whatever in 2021.
Got it.
Gonna keep them on top of that category.
Got it. Well, Matthew, let's do some awards of the year. Who is your offensive player of the year?
By the way, you have yours all listed out, and I don't.
I wrote mine out while we were talking earlier.
I don't think...
And you and I can adjust a little bit so we don't always pick the same player. Sometimes we're going to pick the same player because it's clear.
I think we're going to pick the same player on both of these first two. I've been like...
I had a feeling.
When you have an offensive player like award, how do you not give it to the guy who wins the Golden Boot? 15 goals and 1 assist. I think it's got to be Marcus.
On top of that, the guy who put the offense on his back after Taylor...
For long stretches of the season, yeah.
Scored 8 in 8 straight games and is the only reason... offensively that we were able to win or draw a bunch of those games, and he did it alone more than last year or more than even the year before. So yeah, I think that's just, you really don't have to say much about it. It's Marcus, and it's we're very, very lucky he had the season he had. And it's kudos to him for winning that second. And thank God he won it again in marriage. Didn't fucking win it. Or didn't get a tie. Also the tweet of the season. Defensive player of the year.
I think it's Aiden Bowers.
I think it's Aiden Bowers too.
And like, let me also add here that Aiden ended up with a goal and 2 assists as well. I don't think it's I don't think it's close. I think his reliability in defense, especially in possession and just like how just damn good he was all season.
He had 1 foot placed wrong the entire year.
The entire league season.
The entire league season. Yeah, sorry. The entire league season. That's the pass back to Jean, who maybe it's even Jean's fault. I don't know whose fault it is, but the give up to make it a tie game with Gold Star.
The Gold Star when they went ahead. That's literally it.
Which is insane. Look, Anatoly was excellent. There's no shot at Anatoly.
Yeah, he had a couple goals and I think maybe an assist.
And his highs were incredibly high, maybe even higher than Aiden's. But Aiden's consistency is why I'm giving it to him for this season. He was unbelievable. You want to know? I got honorable mention. JP.
Yeah, I mean, like it's. I 100% agree. Like
our entire
JP
defense was fucking awesome.
But like, I mean, think about the performances that like Jean put in. You know, we probably saved. if you take out like in the league, if you take out the Albion game on the road, I don't know if he saves more than 30 shots on the season. I don't know if he saves more than 20 shots on the season. Like the defense and him, because like he commanded his box in such a way that a lot of teams like tried to put in some crosses, like tried to do whatever, and he just went and got everything.
Yep. You and I also talked yesterday, and we don't have facts to back this up, but you and I have this feeling that if you took Birmingham, where we were under it for large portions of the game, they were very good, and Albion, where we were tired and not very good, if you take those two games out and the saves he made in that game, which was a significant amount in both those games.
And that if you take those two games out, you're down to 24 games because he didn't play in the Savannah away, and he didn't play in the Independent Cup.
So in just saves made, not goals against, saves made, I bet he made more saves in those two games than he made in the rest of the season combined.
No, that's 24. Yeah, 100%.
Which is
100%.
And we haven't counted them, but that's fun.
He didn't make
a lot of games. He didn't make a single save, or actually most games he made like one and sometimes two saves.
He mostly made just one save.
And that, I mean, look, I'm not talking about like going up and catching a ball that's bouncing over the top. I'm talking about an actual save.
Yeah,
like every game he'd have three or four like where he went and got it. But it was crazy when he had multiple saves, like 4 or 5 saves in a game. I was like, what the fuck?
And like and I think the individual award, if I have to choose, is going to go to Aiden. But like that also does not discount the contributions that like someone like Sebastian, or Colin Stripling, or even Jungwoo So for large portions of the season did. And like we gave Richard the Defensive Player of the Year award last year because he was absolutely Superman.
Yes.
And one of the things we talked about, and I'm kind of jumping to a little bit of a formation question. That we got asked in the mailbag.
Sure.
One of the things that we were really curious in, because I postulated like the amount of openness we were in 2022 and how like over reliant we were on Richard to bail us out when the midfield got bypassed. I postulated that like, do we go back to the Christmas tree to become more secure and solid in midfield, or was there something else going on? And what Rod did was he took 2 outside backs, JP on the left, and it's kind of supposed to be John Partita in the initial roster building, but it was mostly Colin Stripling, a little bit of Jungwoo, a little bit of Sebastian, and just placed them in. So we built in a 2-3-4-1, and it allowed like any sort of turnovers in the offensive part of the field. Richard always had extra help to deal with the initial thing. And we could do that and take someone off of the back line, essentially, because Anatoly and Aiden were so damn good.
Yeah.
Like unreal levels. Like those are your 2 best center backs in Nisa.
And look, Colin and...
period.
Absolutely. Colin and Tate play the right back position differently. Tate would stay next to, he was sometimes tucking next to Richard, but he would kind of stay in like a 3-man. Colin sometimes stayed in a 3-man, make and let JP run up and down. But sometimes Colin just stepped in right where Richard would normally be, dead center, let Richard go run around and push the ball wide and lead the charge and do whatever. And then when they would get attacked, he would just be sitting there where Richard would normally be sitting there. And Colin is, we talked about this last year with Ian Serra versus Colin. Actually, sorry, at the beginning of this year we were previewing, I think. But regardless, when Ian Serra was in the midfield and Colin Stripling was in the midfield, we were comparing Rod approaches. They're different kind of midfielders, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you kick the ball around Ian and try to run through him, Ian's not a big guy. He's like 5'7" or whatever. Colin is a big old boy. There was a different physical presence in this team defensively with Anatoly, Colin, and Aiden, but also defensively in the midfield with Colin and Aiden, with Aiden and Anatoly right behind, but with Colin sitting in, sometimes directly in the center of the field. There was just a different physical presence defensively. And coming forward, teams were not able to get out in transition, which is something we talked a lot about. And yes, some of it was for sure formation driven, and some of it is personnel as policy, as you always like to say. And so we started out with a very strong, 2-3 formation in the back with 2 center backs. And then by the end of the season, it kind of became a 3-2, differently, where Colin was much more often right alongside, tucked in as a fullback, right next to Richard, or with Richard moving forward a little bit. And then JP was just, depending on where it needed to be, back with the center backs or way up high or in the middle, because JP had license, but also JP with that superior motor, which we've talked about a million times, was always where he needed to be, whether it was forward or back.
And I think in preseason especially,
We were just a 2-3.
We were straight up 2-3. I think the shackles were a little bit on to.
And when Jungwoo played, we were in a 2-3.
Correct. I think at portions of the season, JP got more and more license, especially when Colin was just like always sitting next to Richard and always being in there. JP got a little bit more license to.
Colin revolutionized us. The wild thing is Colin revolutionized our defense. We were already really, really good, but like he allowed Richard to have more freedom.
Yep.
And he allowed us to be better in possession because Colin in tight spaces. No one, I submit that no one on this team loves a rondo like Colin Stripling. Just by watching him play, because he loves a tight space. Bing, 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 bing. And his inclusion, which we could have easily made the case for as part of the chapters of when he came in, got healthy, finally started playing again.
Yeah.
He really changed our offense in possession.
I think you can draw a direct line between.
We got better defensively and we got better offensively. No shade to Jungwoo So, but Colin's a different player. He's been playing in the system for a long time, and physically he's a different player. And look, it's talking about a 30-year-old pro versus a brand new rookie who's like 23. So
yeah,
no shade.
Absolutely. I do think one of the interesting things that as we got into the later portions of the season, we saw JP a little bit more back in that kind of 2-3 role, especially because Sebastian, when he was playing,
right, because we lost Colin
was mostly like still in the center back line, would occasionally go a little bit forward, but just doesn't have the mobility in his game to be able to go a little forward, provide width, to be a center back at times, to be a 6 at times. So JP was doing a little bit more of that, and so we in the Flower City semifinal game, we were straight up back to being like 2-3-4-1, and sometimes 2-3. Like 5 basically, and just like pinning like this like V formation to like pin Flower City back. And you saw that with the 60 minutes that Colin got when he returned to the squad there. Like it was very much and we talk about, trusting the rod sets, like we're building towards something, and like that was exactly what we were building to, especially having Taylor Gray back on the field at that time.
And look, formationally, we and then minutes wise are important. Capizzucci played a really, really important role this year.
Absolutely.
Because he played some really important minutes in place of Anatoly, both injury and keeping him out of trouble. Did he have a yellow card suspension as well, or never get one?
Anatoly? Yeah, he got one.
So
once.
Colin played those. He also played some minutes to give people rests. But also, as soon as Colin got hurt, he just played that veteran role where he had to become an outside back, which he is not. He's been the outside of a 3, but in my experience watching Colin, watching Sebastian Capizzucci, which I've watched him on 1, 2, 3, 4 teams now. I think that's right. Detroit, I actually didn't watch him on the Cosmos. Milwaukee, Detroit, us. So 3 teams. He played center back or right side of center back in a 3. That's it. Mm-hmm. And watching him convert to outside back, figuring out how to do it, playing simple, playing in like the best possible way, not doing too much, doing the veteran thing. I praised him for
he was
some of the fouls in transition.
Some of the fouls in transition.
Also, he gave us an edge, and this team had a better edge in better gamesmanship when we had the ball, and making sure that if somebody kicked out at him, he made sure the ref knew it. Like he was really special this year, and his veteran presence was really, really important to our back line in a myriad of positions. Yeah. And I'm so happy that the coaching staff went out and got him. I know it was an injury signing to begin with, and man, did he end up playing a big, big role. I want to cycle back out of formations because I think you and I could talk another 25 minutes on formations because it was interesting and we focused a lot on it during the season trying to figure things out. What was your best moment of the year? And I'll go first on the best moment. I have it as Marcus breaking the all-time goal scoring record.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's not the only one. There are several really good moments, but that's the one I chose. It was really, really special. It came after a couple games of it not happening, so there was some like build up to it. And yeah, it was just a really, really special moment. And that's a record that I suspect will stand for a long time. Luke's record stood for, when did Luke play his last game? 17 with us?
18 was his last game.
Okay, so 19, 20, 21, 22. It stood 5 years. And that was with basically us doubling the number and tripling really, the number of games we played per season.
I think actually, believe it or not, we played a lot of games in like 2014, 2015, 2016. We played like 20 games those years.
Okay. Even
So like, it's a little bit like adding by a third maybe, but
And so maybe I'm overstating how long the record will last.
it stood for a while, and
But
it'll probably stand for a while.
We have a 15-year history. We had one super prolific striker that scored a lot of goals, and here's the other thing that's crazy. There's no one close to either guy. It's those two on a plateau. Oching has like 20 less goals.
Yeah, he's at 33.
It's pretty wild. And it was an amazing moment. I also, my goal of the season, spoiler alert, probably would have been my moment of the season if we didn't have a goal of the season. I have a couple different ones. I have a couple ones that could have been, but your turn for best moment.
So I think this is actually interesting because we celebrated the NISA regular season at the conclusion of the Club de Leon game. And like, that's our first professional championship. And it doesn't really do it for me. And not even really.
I know. I chose an individual thing over us winning our first pro championship.
And then you've got the actual.
I still feel that way. I'm not taking it back.
You've got the actual like clincher, which was at Flower City Union, to actually win the thing, right? Not just celebrate it. But I think my best moment is going to be. I think it's going to be at Savannah on October 7. It's one part Marcus scoring the goal that sends us 1-0 up, and one part like closing the game out, winning 1-0, because that was, we still had a game to go, right, to win the championship. That was the day we won the championship.
Yes,
straight up. We finally got a win. It had been a month. It had been since that LA Force win, and we didn't play great at LA Force. We played horribly at Albion. You know,
we didn't play great at Savannah.
This huge long let off, and then like we come back and it's Gold Star with a draw, with a dramatic late rescuing draw. But like to finally get that win, to get Marcus off the schneid, scoring another goal, the creativity was really like the confidence. You could see the confidence building, and you can see what it meant when the ball finally went through the net. And that's the moment we won the regular season championship, even though it took another week to actually confirm and clinch.
So I agree, and that was going to be my second pick.
There was a nice, great crowd of traveling support, and like having sometimes away moments are really, really special, and that was one.
It really felt like we were never going to score again until we scored that one. Like, it just felt like we were I know we had scored against Gold Star, but it just felt like the offense was never going to click, and we were never going to score again. We weren't going to get a win, and we were going to somehow choke away. Like, it just, all the vibes were negative in our own heads and our own emotions.
Yeah.
And we did it. And when we scored that one, I just felt like we were going to get it together. And by the way, we did clearly after that.
Yeah.
And so that was my second place. I almost chose that one.
And by the way, that was a lot of still danger adjacency. Like, we still were not like creating chance after chance. It wasn't like Flower City Union.
But remember, in that game was the first time we saw some different ideas.
Yes, and they were different.
Stopped horseshoeing of death.
Really interesting.
Yeah. I agree. That was such it. And both of those, I think the thing about is both of those goals, both scored by Marcus, both that are kind of meaningless, quote unquote, in the grand scheme of things, because none of them came to like clinch a title or whatever else. They were just really big emotional let-offs.
Yeah.
In a positive way, let-outs, big emotional things. They were great. Okay. What is your goal of the season?
Alex McGrath at Des Moines, in Des Moines, Iowa. We had given up, so in the second half of that game, we had given up a goal
to make it 2-1.
To make it 2-1, and it was a stupid mistake in possession, or trying to keep possession in kind of a dumb way, and one that
was that Colin?
I think it was Aiden actually, and
was his other foot wrong?
Yeah,
That's right.
Because he was as
he
a
had
left
2
center
feet wrong the entire
as a left
season.
center back. He was on like the right hand touchline, and tried to play a ball square to I think trying to go for JP or Richard or something like that to like keep possession, because we had been drilling, especially for new guys, like keep the ball.
Just like last year, where
make
we
good decisions but keep the ball.
Dogmatic.
And it's early season like dogmatic. So he's like trying to do what he's supposed to do. And one thing that separated this year's team from last year's team is this year's team learned above and beyond last year's team, who was very good in possession. Like, there are times when you keep the ball, and there are times where you minimize danger. This year's team regularly. It was a huge learning moment. Is also why it's why I'm mentioning this goal. It's a huge learning moment because number one, he never made that mistake again, and like from then on, all season long, like, oh, like should I try to keep possession? Is that a stupid and risky idea? I'm just gonna clear it. Like, okay, we'll win the ball back, no problem. And so Des Moines scored. I mean, it isn't 5 minutes. It's probably less than that, actually. Great sequence of play that sets up an opportunity. The keeper beats, I think, I forget who is the attacker on
I think
rushing.
it's Juan Louis.
Yeah, maybe.
Beats him to the ball.
Beats him to the ball.
It's a through ball, and whoever it is gets out in front.
Like
Pretty sure it's Juan Louis.
It's the keeper that clears it.
Keeper gets. I think is it a kick? It's a kick, right?
The keeper clears it with a kick. Is outside of his goal.
Turns around
directly to
at the halfway line.
At the halfway line, McGrath like
touches it forward,
collects it forward, and then
chips them from halfway.
And like immediate response, no problem, teammate. I got you. Like we're winning the shit.
Yeah, it was good.
It was, and like to be there for it was fantastic. With the traveling group, and like the guys came over and celebrated those goals with us. Like it was so good. That's my goal of the season because it's really hard not to include a near halfway chip.
I love it. Best celebration of the year, Matthew. I would like to take this one first, and I think we might have the same one. There's been a few really good ones, but the Marcus really long free kick against Club de Leon, where it looked way too long for anyone to be able to realistically get it on. And somebody, I don't know if it was you or somebody else, went like, "There's no way, it's too far out. Fuck, it's too far." If only it was like 4 yards in, 5 yards in.
There's nothing I love more
than being proven wrong. That's not true. Only in those games do you like being proven wrong. And he smashes it from way too far away, and he wheels around. It's that epic picture I've talked about a bunch of times where he embraces Rod, and then Rod fist pumps the whole crowd. It's one of the only times we've seen a huge emotional outburst from Rod, where he's just punching the sky in like ecstasy. And there's that big hug. Like it's so good, and that's my celebration of the season.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
It kind of has to be. I will give honorable mention to Mumu for some backflips.
Yeah.
Because
hell yeah.
How do you not, you know?
I will also say the same goal that you referenced as your goal of the season in Savannah, that was an incredibly emotional celebration for us. I know I lost my voice on that goal because of the guttural yell that I let out. And the Marcus coming over to Lenny, who was waiting for him on the sidelines, the embrace, the entire team, like it was very, very clear that it meant a lot to them. It meant a lot to Marcus. It meant a lot to us. That was another honorable mention of unbelievable celebrations.
Yeah. That's partly why it's the best moment for me.
Save of the season, Matthew. You can take mine if you want.
You go. Let me think of something different.
So my save of the season is in a game we ended up losing, but it was a double PK save versus Birmingham in the shootout. So Jean saves first of all, it's Juan Agudelo, who's a U.S. men's national team player, a guy of some pedigree, and who's like should be better than he is. And he steps up to take it. Jean saves it, and the referee calls him back. And there's a big celebration right after, and there could be a big letdown. And it's just like, fuck, are you fucking kidding me? God damn it. And then he steps up again, and he just saves it again. Never do you see a player get a retake against the same keeper and get a save twice in a row. Never. And John saved it twice in a row. Did we win that penalty shootout? No, we didn't. And that's a bummer. But that was such an unbelievable moment. In the season, the double save on a penalty. His penalties are 80% conversion rate, roughly. 80% per penalty. And he saved them both. It was unbelievable. I know we didn't win the game. That wasn't Jean's fault. It just sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. But yeah, that was my save of the season.
I'll put an honorable mention to the rest of Jean's performance against Birmingham in the Open Cup, because he had a bunch of great saves in that game. I mean, like Birmingham created more; they were the better team. The goal they did score was pretty flukish, just like a crazy couldn't do that twice if you tried type thing. But like John was up to the task far and away against Birmingham. The one I'm going for a different game on purpose here. And it's, spoiler alert, the only other game where he had more than, a few saves. Albion away the second time around.
Yep.
The guys were dead. DED, dead. Tired.
Yep.
Albion had been off for a while. They
hadn't left the state of California in about 4 years.
Came out full court press, just young, running legs. We were tired. And Albion ran us the fuck over in that game. To the point where, like, you could see it wasn't our day. And I've talked about this before, how my philosophy, and it rings true in both basketball and soccer, that if you play, and I use 30 games for this analogy, if you play 30 games, you're going to have 5 games where you're just going to be unbelievable. Like, there's nothing that opponent can do. Like, you're better on that day. There's going to be 5 games where you're not the best version of yourself, and not even close to the best version of yourself. And then it's the middle 20 games that determines, like, truly who you are game in, game out, and what you can do and what you will do. I think it works the same way in soccer. That Albion game, it was one of our games, one of our 5 games where like we are not who we are. And on those nights, all you can do is just hope to get out alive. And Jean was incredible that day. Absolutely incredible. We did not deserve to win that game. Not even close. And Jean kept us in it. Save after save onto crossbar, like whatever,
whatever he had to do.
Whatever he had to do. And the defense did a lot of other things too, blocking shots, whatever. But it commanded his box, like did all the things. And for me, knowing I was getting on a plane about 2 hours later, and knowing that we had, obviously lost a couple nights before, and for our first loss of the season, and knowing we should have lost that game too, like it's just a nice little, like a little punch of like, oh, okay, this is like, we brought this guy in for a reason, like, and we had seen it all year, right?
Yep.
But his performance, was unbelievable.
We hadn't seen the saves,
the shot stopping portion.
We had seen he's a really good keeper, but it reminded me, and I've said this to you privately, but it reminded me that if we go up a level of play, meaning we play against better teams, Jean becomes so much more valuable because he's such a good shot stopper, and you don't see it because these teams aren't shooting and our defense is not allowing shots. But that doesn't mean he's not still an unbelievable shot stopper. Matthew, let's dive into some mailbag. What do you think?
Yeah, we've got actually a bunch of questions here.
Let's start kicking through them. I want to start with this very first one. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit,
sure.
But I actually want to dive directly into it. Zach Taylor, shout out. Inverted holding right back, yay or nay?
Absolute. Depends on the personnel and depends on how you want to play. But like, I don't mind it.
I like it a lot when you have the right personnel. Colin Stripling was the fucking perfect guy for that this year. If we get Colin Stripling next year or another version of Colin Stripling next year, a player that with similar attributes, that where their best ability, I mean, Colin had every piece that made him good at that thing.
He could play a little center back for what did Rod say last year? Like he needs the qualities of a center back. He needs the qualities of a winger. He needs obviously to be a right back, and he needs the qualities of a 6.
And then it depends if you have to play it for 5 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute at a time.
And how much.
And how long can you play well enough at those positions? And Colin could just do it.
So the inverted portion of the right back role, like always inverting into midfield, and because we stretched 4 across, which meant our right-sided winger had to be really, truly the one providing width. It means he was rarely ever asked to play like that winger position. He was asked to play center midfield. He was asked to play, obviously, right back. And he was asked to do some center back stuff. And what were the 2 positions that Colin played before
center back
becoming a right back?
Center back and 8.
Center back and 8/6.
He played 1 game last year. We referenced it in our preview, actually, this year, which I re-listened to. He played 1 game at right back, and when Tate was out, and it was a revelation because he had like an assist for being because he's a big guy and a header across to Brett Jones who needed in. And we were like, he looked pretty darn good at right back. And then, he really changed us. I know we've talked about it a bunch. So, look, I like JP and I like Sebastian. Neither one of those guys plays the inverted fullback like Colin does. So it just depends on personnel.
Yeah, even JP, when we were playing like full on 2-3-4-1, even JP and Colin play it differently.
He plays a great fullback position. I'm just saying nobody plays it quite like Colin on our roster. And so that's why I agree with you. It is personnel based. But if we have another Colin Stripling, or we have a Colin Stripling, a guy named Colin Stripling next year, I am open to the inverting right back 100%. I'm also open to an inverting left back in the same vein if the personnel matches. But what I'm not married to is the idea that your fullback must invert because that's the only way to do things. I don't think that's the case at all. I do think with Richard Dixon as the holding six, having an inverting right back or left back that allows Richard to have the freedom to run around and corral people is super good and super important.
For as long as Richard Dixon is with CFC starting regularly. And again, like, he was brilliant last year. He was pretty damn good this year too. But you still need, if we're going to play with 2 10s or however that configuration works, like, he needs something else near him to just take some of the load off. And you saw what happened this year when some of the load gets taken off. Like,
he becomes much more effective.
He becomes more effective. The team becomes more effective, and we win the ball back faster, which means we can attack for longer, we can have possession for longer, and the opposition will have possession for less amount of time, which means there's just less amount of time they can do bad things to us.
Yep.
So, like, is there, if you think about like future roster construction, is there going to be a midfielder that maybe plays with Richard? And I think he referenced something on Twitter about not being done yet. So I think that it assumed that he's coming back, right? So like you can give him a little bit of help with a midfielder that plays next to him, for example. Like, maybe it's dropping Alex back from the 10 line and playing next to him. Maybe it's a different type of player. You can do that from an outside back or from 2 outside backs. Like, there are ways. I mean, like, or you can go like full crazy and keep one of your outside backs as a center back in possession and throw one of your center backs as a libero into the 6th line, which is a whole different conversation that we don't have time for.
There we go. I was going to say, we don't have time to look at that. That's an off-season conversation. Next question, also from Zach Taylor. Any chance y'all kept up with our average attendance? I did not. However, my understanding is, from what I've heard, which is not the final word, we were like 400 more per game, roughly.
Yeah, I think it depends on if you count Atlanta or not, which...
I count games open to fans.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we had a higher floor. We were never under 2,000.
Yeah, we were never under 2,000. I think we're pushing 2,900.
Which is huge. If we're pushing 2,900, we're up like 700 fans. I think we were like 2,200 or 2,300 last year as an average. I think
if you include Atlanta, we're into the 2,850, 20, somewhere in there.
So we'll see.
We'll eventually have front office people and ask those questions.
And hopefully we'll see that. Out there at some point. But we don't know for sure. But we know it was up, and it was up significantly, which is great. Hypothetical matchups. How would this squad have fared? And we don't have time to dive deep into this, so you need to be good on this one. USL League One, USL Championship, or El League Abroad. We're going to leave the League Abroad out. Actually, no, let's just say
we're leaving the League Abroad out entirely.
Okay. Where do you think we would have fared in USL League One, and where do you think we would have fared in the USL Championship?
So I think this is...
And you need to be quick on this.
This is an interesting question.
Right, which is why we're at an hour and 8 minutes, and I have to go to see Book of Mormon in like less than 2 hours.
Let's try to wrap the mailbag around 6 o'clock.
No, let's just keep rolling. But I'm just saying, like, you and I could talk about this question for an entire episode. So tell me where you think we would have arrived.
So the short version is we don't have access to P1 visas in NISA, right? And I think that shapes everything because those two leagues do. So like you're already opening from an apples to oranges comparison.
P1 visas are getting guys that can come here on only a soccer visa. It's not that we have nobody of foreign descent, but we have nobody here who is on a soccer visa.
Correct. So like...
And that's because the league does not allow us to get that, if you didn't know. The league does not allow us to get that because the leagues run like dog shit. And so they haven't finished up their thing, so we can't do it.
Right. So, number one, it's impossible to compare. And number two, because we do play, for now, in NISA, you build a roster with, number one, what you can get, again, no foreign players, and like what you think can win in NISA. And that leads to, I think, a fundamentally different squad construction than you see in League One, which is typically way more athletic than Nisa. There's some technical play in Nisa, and don't get me wrong, there's some very technical play in League One at times. But like League One as a whole is much more Route One, counterattacking, high pressing type of a league. And this is a last year stat, so like let's bear that in mind. Things could have changed a little bit this year. But last year, I think it was like 3/4 of the way through the season, the team that had more possession lost 2/3 of the time. So like, number one, we're building something completely different here. And I don't think that part would change if we were in League One or not.
You don't think if Rod Hunter was the coach, it's not changing, you silly boy. You know it's not changing.
But like, it's ridiculously hard to compare.
Okay, but I'm gonna do this comparison. If you're gonna,
I think we would have been.
I think throw out the P1s. Who gives a fuck? Constructed how we're constructed now, and Taylor stays healthy.
Okay, that's actually really good.
I think that's a fair. I
think that's a fair barometer. Let League One table. Union Omaha were really good. Just gonna throw that out. They were really good. North Carolina FC was also pretty good. Northern Colorado, by the way, kind of emblematic of the pressing, counterattacking. They also had a couple freak players. I think it gets interesting when you get to like Charlotte, Greenville, and Forward Madison, and even Tormenta and Knoxville below them. Like we played Knoxville in preseason. We were obviously not the same team. Like Rod's teams are very process driven, and so they take a little bit longer. And it always takes longer to put together possession based teams than like Route One, like fuck around teams. And I want to point out we beat Knoxville. Now it wasn't pretty at times, but like. We beat them.
I'm gonna say,
I think we would have made the playoffs.
We're a playoff,
but it would have been. It'd have been a grind to get there.
We're a playoff team
because that defense is just too damn good.
We're a playoff team in League One. The defense is too damn good, and if Taylor's healthy, we would be better and more dynamic. We would have lost. It's a much better league than Nisa, top to bottom. The Nisa is this year especially, and then I think in the championship we are. If we have a good season, we're mid-table. If we have a good season.
Yeah, I think we'd have to get some luck to go our way. Like Birmingham were the 6th seed in the East. And they beat us pretty good. They were better than us.
And honestly, here's where the P1s really, really come to roost.
Yeah.
Is in the championship. Because the level of player they can get that are foreign. They have some very good domestic players as well, but I think like our domestic players in League One, like I think this roster this year, just Rod put together a really, really good roster.
Yeah.
Like our 2 center backs, I believe, would have been 2 of the better center backs in League One. I'm not saying that they would have to, just like in Nisa, they were the clear favorites. Like,
yeah.
I think in League One we would have been a good team, and in the championship we would have been. If we had a good season, if we got a little luck to roll our way, about mid-table, and if luck goes against us, we could be in the bottom 4.
Yeah,
and that is mostly driven by P1s. I think if you give Rod P1s,
it's a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole different, but we can't do that.
You also like, and like we don't know the budget or whatever we're working with now, but like there's a USL Championship like minimum budget.
Yes.
So like if you ask Rod to say, hey, congrats, you're in League One. Hey, congrats, you're in the championship. Like. You have P1 visas. You have these minimums to work with, and the corresponding budget works out to be comparable.
We believe.
Then I think we're going to be fantastic. But that's a different question than what you asked.
We believe that we are roughly competitive to League One salaries. Ballpark. I think we're fooling ourselves. We think we're competitive with championship salaries for the most part because the championship is a larger league with higher salaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Did any Nisa club impress you on or off the pitch?
No.
It's
almost a next question. Like
it is. If our season was shorter, would we have won the playoffs? Jed Henderson. Meaning, and I would say no.
It turns out we needed every little bit of that time towards down the stretch to get better and like truly get back to what made us
and get Colin Stripling back healthy and get Taylor Gray back healthy. Even though it didn't work out, we absolutely murdered. By the way, Jed, if you want to be a real masochist, go do the XG for Flower City and let us know what yours is. I've been thinking about rewatching the game, but
why would you do that to yourself?
I don't know, masochism, I think. But if our season was shorter, by the way, if I rewatch it and we do a podcast on it, it will be our lowest.
There's not a chance I'm rewatching that game. I swear I'm not watching it any. No.
I haven't watched a thing. I haven't watched highlights. I haven't watched anything. So if our season was I don't believe we would have. Playoffs are such a crapshoot. They fucking suck. And it's also so crazy that you and I have talked about how much playoffs suck and how much we hate them and how they're unfair, and yet neither of us included winning a regular season title as our moment of the season. Because unfortunately, those
it's
things
just
are
a
true.
bad taste in like American sports that like you could do everything. You could be
the Braves won the pennant like 21 straight years or the division title rather 21 straight years, and the National League best record a few times, and the whole thing.
Yeah, didn't someone like actually like set like the baseball record for like wins versus losses or whatever like not terribly long ago, and then get bumped out immediately in the divisional series? Like,
playoffs are not fair, but they are the way we judge seasons. So yeah, it just is what it is.
Except not this podcast. We judge season by a total body of work and not just one game.
Depending on when you catch me, yes.
I'll ask you next week.
You just didn't ask me 2 days ago. What part did the odd NISA schedule play in our falters in the end? Do you feel like a more even and balanced schedule? And you need to take this because I know you feel very strongly about this, but also remember where you don't have 10 minutes to rant about this one. Do you feel like a more even schedule would give us better results towards the end of the season and in turn more confidence in the playoffs? From our boy Bill. CFC Gunner 41 on Twitter.
Yeah, I definitely think that the 24 games in 30 weekends, I definitely think plays a role, especially for a possession-based team. You want regular games. You want to play every Saturday or every weekend. You want to play with like the team that we construct like with actual pros, and not just like a hodgepodge of whatever bullshit NISA couples together. Like, you want it punishes teams that aren't performing poorly, because you don't get a week and a half, 2-3 weeks to like get your shit together and formulate a plan and spend 3 weeks on a plan to prepare for one game. Like, you go out every weekend and you play, and by the way, tough fucking luck if you suck, like you're playing again next week and just figure it out. And I think the layoffs do definitely hurt us. And that's not why we lost a semifinal. We lost a semifinal because the woodwork is a cruel fucking bitch. Simple as that. And in full credit, like, because Mike Mejia had the game of his life in goal. And like, full credit, like nothing I can do about that. But like, also we hit the woodwork about 1,000 other times.
Yeah, I've blamed the woodwork a bunch because it's an easy metric to point to, hitting it 4 times in regulation, not even including penalties.
Like, guys, we're not.
But he also made a fuckload of saves, great saves, clearances off the line. Look,
Olympico saves that go down as like a 0.001% chance of scoring that don't even show up in the 3.9 XG. Like, he was just unbelievable. And if we had come together and it was like last year's semifinal, where, and maybe we like it's still 0-0, but we only create like 1.15 in XG. You're like, well, you
weren't good enough.
Created a goal, and like, you didn't score a goal because soccer is is cruel sometimes.
So last year,
then I think this is a more fair question.
Yes,
but we generated 3.9 goals in like expected goals. Like, that is freak to like the 45th degree of circumstances. And it just sucks because like it feels like it happens all the time to us.
Their first shot on target was in the penalty shootout at the end,
and it was
Luke Ferreira saved.
Oh yeah, it was the first one. Yeah.
It is the first one. The Luke Ferreira got saved. It's just we were absolutely dominant, and it didn't go our way. I'm not saying it's okay, but that is the tail of the tape, so to speak. I will also say I don't have the same bugaboo that you have about the schedule. I agree that your way is optimal, but I just don't care. I'm not listening to the excuse last year about us having too much time off, and then this year about us. Just play the games. Everyone has to play the games. It's not fair. It is what it is. You got to go out and beat the players, and I beat the players that are on the other side of the.
And by the way,
team.
It's clearly not what.
And it didn't hurt us.
It didn't hurt us at all.
In fact, I would argue it helped us in the end because we got that extra Club de Leon game to help us. Like, we needed the extra bit. Yeah. Robbie Ryder says, I'm not sure the best way to ask this, and I'll just ask it with the way you said it, because I think you actually asked it well, which is, do you feel like the team too often tried to find the extra pass instead of just taking the shot? It seemed like we were trying too hard to find the perfect shot versus putting up with a tougher one that might or putting up a tougher one rather, and that it might just ricochet in or whatever else. And that is a thing that fans have also long said about Arsenal
and about Pep Guardiola's Manchester City.
Yep.
And you see it now with Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham. Like, similar things were said just a couple weeks ago against Crystal Palace.
I think this is
somebody else.
I think this is a
Fulham, maybe.
I think this is when you watch the game, it is, and you're not scoring, it is a bias that I have as well. When you're like, just shoot the fucking ball, right? I believe in my heart strongly that no, we were patient in general, not just in this game, in general, to find the better shot, because it's a higher percentage chance of scoring. And if you pass up a good pass that goes into a better shot, it's the opposite problem, because you could have just laid it off for somebody. Now, does that mean we didn't, in certain circumstances, just not shoot it when we should have shot it and pass up like a good opportunity for maybe a slightly better one? Yes. And that's going to happen. That is a byproduct of how we play, how possession-based teams play, and how like things happen. However, on the whole, this team was patient, in my opinion, in mostly the right circumstances. They created big chances because they were patient. The thing is, if you want to create really good chances, really big chances, you have to be extraordinarily patient, or you have to be lucky.
Yeah.
It's really, 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 really tough to have it work any other way. So are there times that we should have? Yes, absolutely. But on the whole, I think we were patient. We were methodical. And that's what led to us creating so many big chances, us hitting the bar so many times, us forcing the goalkeeper to make these unbelievable saves. And did it go our way? It didn't. And maybe if we pulled up earlier on one of those, that would have gone in. But there's no way to know that. And we did not get stymied because, in my opinion, we didn't take shots. We got unlucky in some of those moments that where the ball didn't fall right, or the ball didn't settle up right, or the player made a diving clearance. But in general, not just the semifinal, in general, we took good moments, and it just hurts when you're like, just score. Sorry, Mixie. Just score. And you have the chance, and it doesn't happen. And then the pass doesn't work. You're like, well, we could have scored. But what you have to realize is you might not have scored. And the probability was higher by passing it most of the time. And it doesn't feel good in watching the game. But I think those are the facts, and that's what I tell myself. That's the narrative I tell myself, and no one burst my bubble, please.
Yeah, I mean, like, shots from outside the box in traffic are below, probably dramatically, but like below 0.1 chances, right? They're like 0.05 chances, especially with traffic. Like,
shots in the box, by the way, are the same way.
If there's a ton of traffic.
If there's a ton of traffic, and we had, I mean, there's a Marcus chance there where the ball isn't set up for him and he fakes 3 different times, and there's like 4 guys in front of him, and it's like I was screaming shoot,
right?
But by the way, and he does eventually shoot, and there's a ricochet and it doesn't go the right way, but like it felt like, oh my God, what if he shot sooner? But there was 3 guys in his way the whole time,
right?
Like the feeling that somebody should have shot in that moment, and I'm not saying that Robbie's referring to that particular play. I am referring to that play when I had that same feeling. But if we have that feeling on that play, I think it's just an inaccurate feeling, if that makes sense. There's a reason that this podcast, and Matthew and I in particular, rely so heavily on expected goals, because it's math. And if you take a chance as 0.05, meaning less than 0.1, 0.05, less than 0.5% of going in. So if you do the shot 100 times, if you do it 200 times, you're likely to score 1 goal.
0.05 is 5% chance.
0.05 is 5% chance?
0.5 is 50% chance.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. That makes it...
But even a 5% chance... Like,
5% takes 20 of those to score. You're not going to get 20 in a game. You want the 40, 50, 30, 40, 50, 20, 30, 40, 50. Yeah,
if you can upgrade a bunch of your 0.5 or your bunch of your 0.05 chances to produce... I mean, like, I think like you don't want to take 4 0.05 chances to create, like, you'd rather have the 0.2 chance, which comes once, which you have to like take advantage of, but also it's a higher percentage chance of going in the first place.
I disagree.
You still.
I disagree a little bit with this. You don't. It's not 4 versus 1 because you don't just get 1 and 4. If you
don't know what you're getting.
If you keep making the pass, the hope is at least if you keep making the right pass and making the right play, the hope is you're going to get 2 of those chances. You're going to double your odds.
Yeah.
Because if you're just shooting early, that's what it is. So that's how I think about it. I don't know that I'm 100% right, but I feel pretty strongly that that's what it is. And it doesn't feel good, Robbie. I recognize that, man. I agree with you. I have the same feelings, but this is what I tell myself. And it's the same way that, well, 2 days ago was an emotionally horrible day. Well, 3 days ago. Tuesday, I was a fucking mess, and I shouldn't be over a stupid soccer game, but I was an absolute mess emotionally. And then on Sunday, I was in way better shape than I was Tuesday. Way better. But the story that I told myself on Sunday and the story that I'm telling myself today are the same, which is we got fucking playoffed in a different way than we got playoffed last year. Last year we got playoffed.
We got truly playoffed last year.
Well,
like this year we got smited by like the expected goals gods that wanted to make a point on double pivot if they ever find out about this in a few weeks.
It's different. Here's the difference. Let's not tell them. Here's the difference.
I'd be curious to hear a podcast about like how unlikely that is.
Last year versus this year. Last year we got playoffed by you only have 1 game to play and you came with a team that helped you not create anything. And you weren't quite as sharp as you needed to be. And so it sucks. It was only 1 game and they got a lucky goal and they beat us, right? This year we created everything, but because it's only 1 game, instead of it being a 2 or 3 game series, maybe I don't know how I'm not in favor of the MLS model, but of doing 3 game series. But yeah, we got playoffs in an entirely different way. Ross has a question here. Last year, Rod changed his preferred system and introduced wingers. Why did we stick with that this season? I.e., why didn't we change personnel to accommodate his style? And would you expect that we change as we transition into a new league? Well, first I'm going to give you a little wink because I'm not sure if we're transitioning to a new league, but I sure fucking hope so.
Yeah, I think Ross, the thing is here, we kind of did change. Because we think about the 4-3-3 and how we do formations is from defensive formation. So you have the back 4, you have the 3 in midfield, you have 2 wingers and a striker. That makes a 4-3-3. But in build-up, what was dramatically different this year was the 2 outside backs pinching in to create like we talked about earlier. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The 2-3-4-1.
We had an extra player in midfield.
And sometimes one of the 10s would drop in to collect the ball. Sometimes you get one of the wingers to drop in a little bit. Every now and then you get Marcus to drop in, which was fun.
Marcus did a lot later on in this season.
Especially late in the season.
Late in the season, Marcus really became he was always could do this, but became really effective dropping deep. And I think hitting that first time ball out or collecting for a little bit. It was very good.
And I think he did change personnel to fit this style. I think he at some point he went into the offseason and like spoiler, we played the style against Atlanta in the first game after just 12 players on the roster. And
we played what style?
The 2-3-4-1.
Oh yeah, we changed greatly from last year to this year, but it was on the defensive side.
And that was with Joseph Perez as the left back and Jung Lusso as the right back because Jonathan Partita, who was brought in I think to be the starting right back, was unavailable because of injury, and like Partita, who had spent some time as an outside back and also spent some time as a 6, kind of naturally, I think what the plan was, to play in that sort of style all season, and we ended up sticking with that. So, yeah, I take slight issue with that question, but I think it's a really interesting one,
So shifting forward, I agree with you, but shifting forward into the forward line, playing with wingers versus playing Christmas tree, because we did not play Christmas tree, we played with wingers.
Yeah.
Why do you think he didn't go back to the Christmas tree?
Taylor Gray. And because I think he wanted to find a way to get Richard help. I think the question of being too open, when we had him on the podcast, he like we talked about beforehand, like, I don't know, we were kind of open, like this gave us a lot of moments. Richard was incredible, but like, is that sustainable?
And he was like, no, it's
not. He was like, no, it's not. So we went out and got like literally the 2 best center backs in the league this year, Aiden and Anatoly.
One from outside of the league, one from inside of the league.
Right. And then just brought help in terms of the outside backs who were also better defend. Like all 4 of our defenders in their positions were better than the defenders,
their defensive counterpart
than last year, and that's
Right.
including Colin as a right back.
Look, Tate is a solid defensive right back. Colin is better defensively.
Yeah.
Look what Tate did offensively this year in League One. He was great.
7-8 assists, something like that.
I'm not saying he was poor defensively. He's not. He's a solid defender. Colin's a better defender.
And like for what we
Colin's
were looking
a center back playing right back.
for what we were looking for, especially because Tate chose to do something else. He chose to go back closer to home and like and go to League One and like we're not bad. It was a great move for him. Turns out.
I think Tate would have been great absolutely. I think he would have slotted right into that Partita role. No problem. I don't think we ever would have signed Partita
because
he
you
would have
had
played it the same way with JP.
Like, a little bit of a 6, a little bit of an outside back, and then a bunch of like his winger quality that you saw with all the assists this year
would have been
100%. Yeah.
So there's no shots being taken, but he is defensive wise though. Like Colin Stripling is a center back now.
We had to adjust to make it fit what
the other thing is
needed.
Greg Stratton, Travis Ward, good players. Travis Ward particularly going forward. Greg Stratton, very balanced player. JP's just a better defensive player than both those guys.
Yeah,
better defender.
I mean, JP was best left back in the league.
Yeah, that's so like you just added so much quality, and then like shout out to Jean, a whole different caliber. He's 2 years in a row he's won the Golden Gloves, and he's enormous. So like we got the help there. But going back to wingers, which we've not answered the question, we already had Damian, and Damian's. It is arguable whether he's more of a 10 or more of a winger. Now, he didn't end up playing a lot, but we had him to begin with. What I think happened is the play of players that were available. We had Taylor coming back, and I think Rod looked at Taylor and went, the reason we changed last time was because of Marcus and then Taylor being better starting out wide rather than starting up. And he just went, I'm sticking with wingers. I also don't believe there is a thought that I struggle with that is Rod is married to his ideas. He is not married to his ideas. He's married to his principles.
Yeah.
And the principles and the ideas change. The principles remain the same. The idea is what kind of formation are we playing? The principle is that players have to be able to interchange, play multiple positions, keep the ball, play with the ball, disorient and unbalance the team with the ball. Those are principles. The ideas could be, I think you could see Rod play, this is a wild one, but he did it once, twice this season, play a 3-man if he felt like his principles would be best expressed by the personnel. Now, is that his preference, his first preference? No. But he will do whatever it is within his principles to put players and personnel in the right positions to succeed. And I believe he'll go back to wingers again. And here's why. I believe he liked this year, especially with our defense being as good as it was, but being a little bit isolated positionally because they were very responsible with Colin staying back deeper and JP being always up and down and getting back and not getting stuck up and forward. I think he really valued having dynamic wingers. We said it a million times as our offense went, as our winger play went. Mm-hmm. And I think that blueprint going forward is a very doable and workable blueprint. I think you see Pep Guardiola doing it at Manchester City slightly differently, but in the same way with extremely dynamic wingers. And by the way, Pep plays one dynamic winger and one less. They plays them a little bit differently. He doesn't play Doku and which is a whole other thing. He doesn't play Doku and Grealish at the same time, which is a wild thing. But point being is I think because you can then let the wingers cook, let them beat some guys. And you saw with Jesus bringing in really dynamic players, he found a way to make the offense work. He found a way to make it work with Marcus. And I've been surprised before, but I just think he will continue down. There'll be some tweaks for sure because he has tweaked every year something.
Right.
And he will tweak to the personnel more than anything. But I think principle-wise, if he can get a dynamic winger that does his principles, and Taylor Gray is back, which I just don't know how you don't bring Taylor back with how good he's looked these last 2 years, assuming he wants to be back. Like, I think you'll see him playing with wingers again. And I also think it's easier to find a dynamic winger than it is to find a 10 that can do the dynamic things and provide the width. I'm not saying those players don't exist, but I think it's easier to find a feet on the touchline winger. And if we go into a new league, knock on some wood, and we get P1 visas, like there exist more tricky wingers in the world. And I think that you'll see more. I think there exists more feet on the touchline tricky wingers.
We'll discuss this a lot more as we get into the roster building phase. But I do think now that a lot of teams are playing possession, a little bit pressing, sometimes inverted, fullbacks or whatever, I think there's a bunch of different models out there between Arsenal and Tottenham and Man City and even Bayer Leverkusen. Like, there's enough models out there that it doesn't always have to look the same. And it'll be really interesting. Like, CFC mostly modeled what ended up becoming Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham at one point in time.
Don't be crazy. He modeled us.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we already talked about this formation question, the style of play, 4-3-3 versus a 4-1-2-2-1. I'd rather not dive super far into that because I think we've...
We're done. That's covered. That's covered. I just didn't mark it out.
I'm marking things out while we're going. What was the most important position to get right? I don't know who asked this question, so sorry.
I think it's in Ross's... It's in Ross's group.
Hell yeah. So Ross asks, what is the most important position to get right, or get correct, and how would you grade us this season on accomplishing that? I love this question.
It's a great question. So number one, it's not one position for me. It's the spine. It's your goalkeeper, your center backs, and your six. Everything, because those are the four players that, and maybe not always goalkeeper, but those are the players that touch the ball the most. In this type of system, those are the players that touch the ball the most. You have to get your center backs right. You have to get your six right. And then you have to figure out what else goes around that. But and think about who are our best, most consistent players in terms of how we play, which is possession. It is not you want your wingers and your strikers to be dynamic and involved and wild and scoring goals and creating. But the foundational principles of this team are your six and your two center backs and your goalkeeper. And I think it's an A fucking plus.
I am going to take a slightly different way on that. I agree, but I think it's a cop-out to say the spine because he said one position. So I'm going to pick one position of the spine, though I fundamentally agree with you. And I am going to say I think, and I would include, by the way, in the spine, because it's right up the middle, I would also include the striker in that, just because if you have, anyway, revolutionized last year when we got striker play fixed, and last year our most important player was Richard Dixon at the six. It is the six. In a Rod Underwood possession system and in Ange Postecoglou, to use your Tottenham boy, the most important player on the field, and there are other players who do unbelievably important things, is Basuma for Tottenham. And for us, it is Richard Dixon, but it is not just Richard Dixon. It is whoever's playing the six. So it is Richard Dixon, but in this year, our most important was whoever was able to play the six, which sometimes was Colin Stripling coming in from right back with Rich just being an 8 and running around.
And sometimes it was JP.
And occasionally. It wasn't JP as much.
Not as much, but
it was whoever was the ability to let the six play or be the six. And sometimes Colin Stripling was the de facto six because Richard was the 8 and running around everywhere. And sometimes it was just Richard by himself. Last year it was Richard by himself the whole time, and I think we nailed it this year because Richard was not the Superman that he was last year. He was good this year. He was unbelievable last year defensively. Yeah. He covered so many defensive holes for us last year that he never should have had to and never should have been able to. He was still good this year, but the system was much better set up to help him this year and to make him still successful, and that will remain and continue to be, in my opinion, the one position we have to get right. If we don't get the six, that anchor, that connection between midfield and defense, if Richard Dixon goes down and we don't have the right player in his place, if we don't have the right way to get Richard the coverage he needs so that he can do his job, whatever, we're fucked. That's the most important position.
Okay.
Other teams in the league were, this is again from, I think from Ross, love this question as well. Other teams in the league were constantly bringing and losing players, but CFC really never does that. Setting aside Ibarra, signing, and by the way, Capizzucci as well, I'm adding that, which he said he thinks he has to do with Taylor and Damien's injury, and for the Ethan Corin injury and
Ali
Jaime's injury. And Ethan Corin getting hurt meant that we had to sign Capizzucci, by the way. So I'm adding a little bit to that of my own. Why and how do other teams do it, and why and we don't? Actually, this is a really easy answer. Number one, we pay our bills and we pay our players. So
and we actually abide by contracts.
Bingo. Club de Leon stopped paying their players at a certain point. They had to host tryouts. They brought in guys to bring. Number one, we pay enough for our guys to this be their main gig. Most of them coach on the side or do something else to supplement that income. Nobody is getting rich in NISA, but our guys are paid a much more fair wage than most others in NISA. So that's the first part. So they're able to be full professionals. They don't leave mid-season to go do other things. Also, we just sign quality players and quality guys because of that. So we have a full roster. So the only way we're going to sign a bunch of guys mid-season is if we have real injuries. And the only way a bunch of guys are going to leave is if they have terrible injuries. Partita, by the way, another injury that we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
We have a big injury bug, which we did this year, so we signed a couple guys. Or guys could leave if they retired or whatever else. But that has not happened to us, and it's not likely to happen to us because, again, they make enough that they're able to have a life and do their thing, and so they'll retire after the season, not
also,
mid-season.
it's worth sticking it out, and like maybe you get, even if you're not playing very much, like maybe you get your chance at some point.
But if you're
in some places, if you don't know if the bills are going to get paid or whatever, like it's probably worth just saying, hey, yeah, you know, my contract, you're not really upholding it. Like
my
I'm just
payment's
gone.
coming late. I can't pay my bills.
Yeah.
Oh, I got this girl. I mean, real talk. I got this girl pregnant, and I make literally no money. I'm here on $500 a month. Like I can't. Like that's just not like that's not the CFC way.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to skip a question with Damien because it's just injury. The answer to that is injury.
Yeah. I actually don't even know exactly what it is.
I don't either, but I know he's had several injuries this year. That's by the way, I have the same question because I don't actually know any more than that. He wrote skip this question. I did not. What players from other NISA teams would you not mind seeing next year, Matthew? I know you love this question. Go.
So I'm gonna take this with the assumption that the rumors about MLS Next Pro are true.
Go.
Just because like I think it's pretty damn likely. And we'll find out next week if that's really the case or not. The answer is probably no one, honestly. If you think about it, Next Pro is a better league. I realize it's populated with exclusively reserve teams this year, but like it's just a better league. Like it's
quality of player wise.
The quality of player, yes, they're young.
That's not every player on every team, but in general, the level is higher.
Like it has a reputation a little bit of like only being academy kids and whatever. Like these teams are required to have actual pros on the roster. In fact, they're more than required. It's in the roster rules, and they pay real money because they want the standard to be high, especially for those academy kids who they want to like bring into MLS and then sell on for real, actual like millions of dollars, right? So the standard is really good. We'll find out, assuming we go, we'll find out like truly what the standard is, like, and what the comparisons are. And
this is the first podcast we've actually like acknowledged the rumors as probably true.
Yeah.
Like I think you and I are finally coming around that it's, you know, hopefully fucking happening.
Please, Lord, and the creek don't rise. But like, if you look at that, it's also a league where like, the age skews young, and because like, you know, we want to be those clubs like need to develop young players, and we also need to develop young players too. Like, and if we start turning over roster and stuff like that, I would imagine in an ex-pro situation, like we need to get younger because players become investments. And like,
yeah, you hope to move those players up the food chain and make some money off their movement.
Right. So like, if I think about some of the better players in NISA right now that are not on our team, you've got guys like Darwin Espinal at Maryland and maybe Daniel Bedoya at Albion. Darwin's going to be 29 in preseason next year. Daniel Bedoya is going to be 30. That doesn't like, and like those are some good players, and I think could do a job for us this year and maybe next year. But like, does that strike you as the type of player that we would want to like bring over with us, or like, and so in that mind, I'm thinking of, are there any like 18, 19-year-olds like that are just like trickling around NISA that like could really like have a serious potential to move up? And maybe there are. And if there are, I assume Rod's going to know exactly who he wants. Mm-hmm. But I can't think of any. And so like maybe if I'm an odds maker, I'm putting that number at 0.5. Like maybe it's 0, maybe it's 1, but like that's where I'm putting the odds. I just don't, or the over-under.
The only players in NISA we are taking to MLS Next Pro are on CFC already. That is my belief. I'd be glad to be wrong, because look at Taylor Gray and where Rod just plucked him out of nowhere, and we were all like, "Oh, this guy's probably good," and then he was, one of the best players, probably one of the best players in NISA this year.
He's the best winger in the league.
So I don't know what's going to happen. I will point out there's like 5 players in the entire league who I like. There's 2 on San Diego. Cartagena, the holding midfielder, who I think is a good player. Ernest Mitchell, actually center back. So there's 3 players. I like him.
And Ernest Mitchell was playing a lot of right back and kind of like that Ben White role. If you follow Arsenal at all, so he was playing, I think, a little bit out of position.
But I like him. He's a good player. Daniel Bedoya. I don't believe any of those 3 players profile well age wise. For us,
Mitchell's the best, but he's still like probably
So
25 or something.
and by the way, I don't know that any of those guys really upgrade for us. So right now, and but I like those. I'm just giving you players I like in the league. Then for Maryland, I like Filerman. I've always liked Filerman, left back, and I like Darwin Espinal.
Yeah.
Again, neither one of those guys profile right age-wise if we are going to MLS Next Pro.
Yeah.
And if we were in NISA, currently those guys are not big upgrades for us. Darwin would be useful because he's a goal-scoring winger. So like I'm not saying that either one of those guys would be the right talent level for CFC right now in NISA, but like it's just neither one of those guys make this huge upgrade, and I don't believe going to MLS Next Pro we're going to go with the 30-year-old roughly age profile. I also like the goalkeeper from Maryland Bobcats, but he's not an upgrade on either of the guys we have. So like
right.
I think he's a decent player. That's basically it on the league. I like Marich. Okay, he's okay, but I don't think he fits us. There's just like
there's some decent players out there that don't necessarily fit our style of play. Beyond like maybe not fitting the general like age profile if we do go to next.
So I'm going to take this question. I'm going to twist it a little bit. I don't think there's anybody we're taking. And if there is somebody, Rod knows about them, and I don't know about them. If we do go to MLS Next Pro, I think Nisa dies. And if Nisa dies, I think you're going to see very few, maybe even it would be just a very small handful of players that will end up in that league overall. Probably like. I would say less than 5. I put the over-under on like 3.5.
Yeah.
But I do think out of this league, you will see, out of NISA, you will see maybe double that number, 7, 8, maybe even 10 guys go play in USL League One.
If the league
dies. Go play in League One. A couple guys probably get in the championship. Like, there's some other players that are professional. I just think the way MLS is skewing, mostly young and talented, is not how NISA is for the most part. And so I don't see us taking up people, and I don't see a bunch of NISA players finishing or ending up in at least this year's crop of NISA players, rather, ending up in MLS Next Pro. Todd Hudgens asked, "How did missing Taylor's impact and limit what the team was capable of?"
Yeah, I think we covered.
I think we've covered this without. Yeah, so like it limited us hugely. He also came back at the right time. He also didn't even come back at his full potential, and it just shows how good we could have been with him. And I mean, just imagine Ibarra and him together, man.
Yeah.
Or hell, Mumu and him together when Mumu was good. When on the days that he was good, rather. Imagine Damian when he was healthy. Like, there's just so many ways that Taylor makes that team better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why was there a reluctance to counterattack during the season when opportunities were obvious? This is a question I really do like. I do think there's some room for improvement. First of all, athletically, we are not built to counterattack.
Personnel is policy.
So
when you listen, I listened to Rod's interview with us last year on one of my long drives the last couple of days, and Rod essentially said, like, you look at the kind of some of the guys we have, like Ian Cerro or Marcus last year, and I think this year it's Marcus, even Mumu a little bit, Jesus definitely, and Luis, like they're not counterattacking players, like they're just not, and like they're and like I think that's just the whole sum of it. Like,
and it's athletically they're not counterattacking players,
right? Yes, and like they're better at other things, and we built our team to play for their strengths and not to something they're not good at.
And our best, and also, by the way, we didn't only build a team. We made, like, Rod drilled into them to not go get isolated by yourself. You can clearly see that.
We got isolated a lot in the
middle of the
season, especially post Taylor's injury.
We got isolated where we didn't have the players, we didn't have the triangles. And we have one player on this team that is, or two players really, two players in this team that are built to get on the counter. 2 players. 3 if you want to count a distributor. Anatoly can kick the ball a fucking country mile.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And actually, I'm sorry, and there's 3 more players on top of that. Juan Louis is built to get on the break. That guy's athletically built to get on the break, and also his instincts are to take on the man and beat a guy and get in there. So he was the one winger, and by the way, you saw it. We did go long, and we did play more on the break. With and I realize going long and on the break are not necessarily always the same thing, but in this, I'm grouping them together because the skill set can be similar. And Alice McGrath in transition is very, very good at stepping, and when we did go in transition, it was normally because Alice McGrath caused a turnover.
It's just like one man, like oftentimes it was one man press, like setting
take
everything
the ball,
up.
do the thing, yeah.
Not like a full, like we win the ball and it's 7 guys, like or 4 guys or whatever going forward. It was rarely like that.
So you have one distributor who you did see go long a bit. You have one guy in Juan Louis who played every regular season game, but by the way, he only started the first like third of them and then didn't really start much after that.
Yeah.
you have Alex McGrath, who did start all the time and did get, when we got in transition, it was usually because Alex McGrath did it. I would say, in my own mind, probably 70% of the time. And your other player is Taylor Gray, who can do it all. Taylor Gray is a complete winger and is very good at getting into space and getting on the break. He got hurt 5 games in. I do think you would have seen us get more into transition with Alex and Taylor Gray combining, with Luis slipping more balls in, with maybe you playing a winger that's a little more direct in Juan Luis on one side a little more often, with Taylor starting potentially if Taylor doesn't get hurt, but he got hurt.
Yeah.
Jesus Ibarra is a very good player. Marcus is a very good player. Neither one of those guys in a straight line is very fast. They're both incredibly technical.
Yep. And
kicking the ball long to them, if you didn't see it, like, go back and watch it. Neither one of those guys is beating most center backs in a foot race, and definitely not beating the outside back. So it just wasn't our game. And so I am happy with how we play. Would I like us to be better in transition going forward? Yes. That's why I like this question, because I would like us to have a more balanced attack and be a little bit better in transition. And in transition moments, like, which one of the things Todd alluded to is, why didn't we go for it more often? There were definitely times that I wanted us to go for it and we didn't. I understand why we didn't. I'm not upset that we didn't when I try to use my logic to it. But also, if we have Taylor, and if we have another couple players that are in the lineups on different days, there's a world in which we can be more balanced and be better at using space. And that will stretch defenses out and make us better at what we currently do.
Breezy, it's 6 p.m. on Friday night. And I say that because this next question, like, immediately got answered just a couple minutes ago.
Really?
And when you listen, and when y'all listen,
kind of thought we were skipping this question.
When you listen to the podcast, whenever it does come out, like we have this news now, so we're just going to talk about it. Jeffrey Clymer had asked, who are the most likely returners based on multi-year deals or performance or whatever factors, like maybe this, maybe next pro type thing. And
oh fuck, okay,
the club has announced end of season roster decisions ahead of 2024. So I'm just going to read it to you. Listeners, we've been going for an hour and 52 minutes. This news just came out. We don't have the emotional processing power to do this now, nor the time. You have Book of Mormon tickets.
I do. You have them tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
I have them tonight.
Fucking can't wait.
Bill's going. Bill, one of the guys who asked questions near CFC Gooners, also got him tonight.
Nice. Well, maybe we'll talk about it next week.
We don't have them. Smitty has them with me tonight.
Oh, hell yeah. Tell him I said hi.
Hopefully I'll see Bill. We don't have them together.
Okay. Well, so we're just we don't have the time. We don't have the processing power. We're just going to acknowledge this. We're going to read it. And then there are some goodbyes that we have to say that we'll do very short order. I do want to come back in another podcast, whether it's the next one or a separate one, to formally and officially say goodbye, remember moments, talk about the things that make us happy, and obviously we wish them well now, and we'll do that as well in a future pod. So let me just read this for you real quick.
Returners first.
Chattanooga Football Club today announced end of season roster decisions ahead of the 2024 season. The following 8 players will be returning for the 2024 season: Jean-Antoine and John Burke, so both goalkeepers; Richard Dixon, Jesus Ibarra, Luis Garcia Sosa, Joseph Perez, Anatoly Prepelica, and Damian Rodriguez. The following 6 players will not be returning for the 2024 season: Alex Jaimes, Lenny Lopez, Mattia Mwape, Marcus Nagelstad, Jung Woo So, and Colin Stripling. Next paragraph. Lionel Alvarenga, Aiden Bowers, Sebastian Capizzucci, Taylor Gray, Ethan Corrin, Juan Luis, Alex McGrath, and Jonathan Partita remain in discussion with the club about returning for the 2024 season. The futures of the remaining 2024 roster will be communicated at a later date. Everyone at Chattanooga FC would like to deeply thank all the departing players for their contributions to the club and to the community. And it lists out the roster as of today. 2 goalkeepers, John Burke and Jean-Antoine. 2 defenders, Joseph Perez and Anatoly Prepelica. 2 midfielders, Richard Dixon, Luis Garcia Sosa, 1 forward, Damian Rodriguez. That also should include Jesus Ibarra. So, yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, let's start with the returners real quick.
I'm gonna cobble while you do something. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you write some things.
Does not look like Fabian and Hugo were mentioned on academy contracts. Number one, let me take a second to cobble together.
Kind of unsurprising there, I guess. Meaning, like, I would imagine. I don't know if they're trying to go to college, trying to not go to college.
Yeah, and
what they're trying to do.
Whole different ballgame.
Okay, so we kind of knew some of these, right? But Jean-Antoine being back, John Burke means the goalkeeper position is set for next year. We're not going to do super deep analysis here, but now seeing it for the first time. Captain Richard Dixon is back. Jesus Ibarra signed mid-season, so it makes perfect sense that he would be on a more than a 1-year deal, or like a season and a half or whatever. It might have been a 2.5 season deal. Who knows? Luis, that one's interesting. He also signed late in the offseason, so it may be the same type of thing with Jesus. He may have had an option, or maybe I don't know. But he's coming back. Joseph Perez, best left back in the league, not a surprise there. Anatoly, not a surprise again there with probably the best center. Him and Aiden being the best center backs in the league. And then Damian, we knew that Damian was coming back because we knew they signed him to a multi-year deal. They announced that during the season. Okay, I want to, before we get to the goodbyes, Beto, that's Lionel Alvarenga. Beto, Aiden, Sebastian Taylor, Ethan, Juan Louis, Alex McGrath, Jonathan Partida. Remaining in discussions, meaning this could be anything between currently negotiating a contract with a contract offer on the table with whatever. I mean, we're a week out. We're not even to the championship game we were already announcing. This is wild. That's just so fast. And I think mostly a good way, but so fast. But you have guys like...
It could be a negotiating a contract
yes.
right now. It could be renegotiating because they didn't want to activate their option. So you're renegotiating a contract to see if you get that, or you might still activate their option, which we have until November 30 to do. It could be they were on a 1-year deal, no option, so we need to renegotiate. Just
if they
in
want
general,
to sign again.
It could be like someone like Jonathan Partida is a great example here because he was hurt literally all year, coming back from an ACL injury. You know, we may not want to, for example, offer him a contract until we see him in preseason.
Right, because he was just barely coming back to practice at the end of the season.
So like, there's a wide range, and we don't have time or capacity to really speculate or anything on this category.
Yeah, I was not prepared for this.
Okay, I put together a little thing for these 6 goodbyes.
So I would like to, Matthew, suggest that we do what we have always done. We're not always, but what we've always done with this podcast, which is talk about a couple like fun and key moments. And I'm going to tell an Ali Hyman story now. That he's.
Do you just want to do this now, or like?
I want to talk about some of the guys that are leaving. Yeah, and we can talk about it more. Later.
I'd like to talk about it more. I just don't think I have it in me.
Okay. You can do a whole separate podcast later?
Let's just, I don't know if it's a whole separate podcast. I don't know if it's like...
Gather some stats, if we talk through some moments.
If we have to tack it on to news or whatever we do, like I just want to... Okay. I want to do it justice, and this will not be justice.
I want to say, okay, I'll say one thing. Alex, Lenny, Mumu, Marcus, Jungwoo, Colin, we'll do a better tribute at some point, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for, whether you played 2 years here, 3 years here, 1 year here, you guys fucking rule. We love you. Once a blue, always a blue. And we will memorialize you. You're not dead, but we will memorialize you later in a more fitting way, where we talk about some of the positive moments and the fun memories, and maybe we have some top memories from each of you, and we'll do a justice there. And then maybe once we get some more, because holy crap, now that I'm thinking about it, like Beto, Aiden, Sebastian, Taylor, Ethan, Juan Louis, Alex McGrath, Jonathan Partida. That's 8 players still in discussion. That's a lot of variance. That's a lot of potential goodbyes or welcome backs or whatever they're going to be. So, okay, well, fuck that noise. I was planning to do analytics and not feelings, but now I have lots of feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so knowing who signed multi-year deals, Jeffrey, didn't matter by the end of this because we know who's back. I will. The one thing I will say about some of the guys that we have already signed and some of the guys that are on the list of guys who are coming back, looking at this list and thinking about next year, some of these guys will be nailed on starters, but some of these guys are coming back and will either be fighting for starting jobs or will be backups. And I'm not saying who is who. What I am saying is we're entering we hope, a new league and a whole new horizon. And it's going to be very interesting to see who is where and speculate privately and maybe publicly on who is going to play and who's going to be the starter. I'm sure we'll produce predictions for starting lineups and whatnot. I think if you look at something like the goalkeepers, we brought back both goalkeepers. You got to assume, I shouldn't say got to, I would think we're not going out and getting another number one, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You're letting John Burke continue to grow into that number 2 role, or maybe, going into his second year, he can start taking playing time from the starter in Jean, and then you're bringing Jean forward to be the guy, I would think. Yeah. I'll stay out of the rest of them, but like I'm just using those as examples. Like position by position, it may change on whether we think those guys are going to be starters, just like contributors, depth pieces, or just guys that fight for.
And that's all going to depend again on
who we sign,
on the personnel.
Well, Matthew, it is the end of 2023. This is not the final podcast of 2023, but this is very much the end of 2023. This is our final. At least so far that we've no, it's not. This is our wrap up, our analytical wrap up. That's what I'll say. We're still going to have hopefully Rod Underwood, and now I will put out the call for questions. If you have questions for Rod, by the way,
scheduled soon.
He is scheduled for next week. Knock on wood, nothing comes up, but that is the schedule. That is the plan. I'm going to tell you now. If you ask, I mean this with love. If you ask a question that we don't want to ask, we're not going to ask it because it's Rod and like. I'm terrified to ask him a question I shouldn't ask him. But please send us in the questions. I will steal your ideas and steal your questions and give you credit, of course, if we have a good question from you.
And by the way, we did not last year when we had Rod on the podcast. Roster decisions were not out yet, and they kind of mostly trickled out really in the end.
They certainly did come out in a group fucking 5 days later.
Yeah. So like,
holy shit.
Are we going to ask him about like? The decision to keep certain players and like,
are we gonna
ask like straight up like
Bowers, our defensive MVP is gonna be back?
Like we're not gonna ask like straight up like why did you cut this player? Why did you keep this player?
Yeah,
like,
definitely not gonna do that.
It's more like I'm just not getting into that process because that's going way too far. I do think we will talk about like the players that we're keeping and why and be a little bit more general about it. And I understand that might be frustrating to listeners to not get like that side of things, but like there's some things that
I'm uncomfortable.
I don't want to know.
I will also point out that with all due respect, I don't know that Rod is coming on this podcast if we were going to beat him up with questions like that.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to. He chooses to. He's very nice and generous with his time, and so we're just going to be a little bit careful about just things that would make him uncomfortable. And talking about that kind of stuff. I do think some of these questions are excellent. Like if our season was shorter, would we have won the playoffs? But like some of these,
like thanks for the mailbag.
These are so good. These are so good for us today, but some of these are so good. So if you want to hear Rod answer these questions,
we stopped planning like a full on analytical review because like some of these questions like were just
better than the questions that we had for each other.
Do the thing.
So listeners, thank you for listening. Viewers, thank you for watching. As Jay said, we are on YouTube. If you could give us a thumbs up, if you could shoot a comment out there, it really does help the algorithm. It also lets us know that you're appreciating the YouTube, which is a more work than just the regular podcast. So if you're liking it, we appreciate it. Again, thank you for listening. We can't wait to be with you soon. And you got to say something?
Nope. I was just going to say thanks for listening and thanks to the players and bye.
And bye. There we go.